So lately I've been noticing what I've been noticing. What I mean by that is, or another way to say it is, paying attention to what calls my attention. And I've been documenting what has been calling my attention with these pictures that I'm showing here. If you ever play video games, usually if there's like a treasure or something or something along those lines, it's highlighted or there's an illumination to it, which calls your attention in the game to go over there and get whatever's in the box. Same thing in this situation. I do think life, the universe, your higher self, whatever, highlights things, calls things out for you to pay attention to, that gives you little nuggets of wisdom or health or, shield, whatever it may be that you need in that moment in time. These little nuggets come in the form of energetic nudges or niggles. Like everything in nature, there's a call and response. It reminds me of the It from Bit Theory by Ken Wheeler. And if I may be so bold to break it down, to me it means attention is the greatest resource. And while Shakespeare said to be or not to be, Ken says to be is to be perceived. And while I am not scientific naturally, I'm not so extreme that I think, science and art can't coalesce. And rather, I think they're complementary. And instead of getting more into the physics of all of it, I just like to dub it the art of noticing. And just to clarify, I'm not talking about ego-driven attention, but rather, that deep soul's desire to be seen, felt, heard, understood. It's the universal pattern of recognition, or, God's love language. I don't know if you're familiar with that, physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service. I think that's it. But the universe has its own love language, which I just mentioned are signs and synchronicities. And it is a lot like learning a new language or getting to know someone for the first time. I definitely believe God is trying to romance us, and that he, she, whatever, knows how to specifically turn us on, in the right ways. We all have our own secret sauce, the formula that nurtures and fulfills our greatest potential. And, God be cooking. I'm also aware that personality has a lot to do with perception, and the language that God uses to get through to me won't necessarily be the same that he uses to get through to you. One of the ways messages from beyond have been getting through to me is palindromes, which is numbers that repeat forwards the same as they do backwards. So like 303, 808, 1221, 1001, this type of thing. And each, one of those can represent a different message in itself. And it's easy enough to look up on the almighty Google, but I think it's important to check in with your initial gut feeling of what those messages represent. And in essence, the palindromes have been reminding me of the concept of mirroring, as within, so without, or magnetism. The attraction factor whose genesis starts with you, the observer. Another phrase that's coming to mind is how you do one thing is how you do everything, which is actually a super annoying concept to sit with because, just think about how you take a dump, right? Like, nobody wants to think about that, but you do it. If you do everything like you take a dump, you might just want to learn how to wipe, right? I'm sure I lost some of you there who got annoyed or disgusted by that reference, but if you're still here, stick with me for a moment, because I do think that heavier feelings like disgust, resentment, anger, shame, sadness, disappointment, all of these and more have a place in signs and synchronicities as well. It's not always this airy-fairy, positive vibes, type of stuff. It goes both ways, and it's equally valuable to pay attention to those so-called negative emotions. I think that's one of the things that has caused the most friction in my life, is being surrounded or involved in a culture that does its best to avoid or neglect any negative feelings and the, stay strong, brother type of vibes. I bought into this well for a long time, so I'm not pointing any fingers, but I am pointing to the fact that the unwillingness or the inability to express negative emotions or recognize them in the very least produced a whole lot of shame and kept me stuck for way too long. Which is why I want to focus on the wiping component here, because just like everybody poops, everybody has these uncomfortable truths that they would rather die than acknowledge. Just a disclaimer, I am not a healthcare professional, and these are just my own personal opinions, so please take this with a grain of salt and use your own discernment. I want to pick on shame because that rancorous monster has given me the most trouble in my life. Let's start with what it is. I believe that there's two types of shame: clean shame and dirty shame, believe it or not. Clean shame comes from being misaligned with our own core values, sense of self, and integrity. Dirty shame comes from being misaligned with the group's core values, or culture's core values, or your family system's core values. To give you a concrete example, I had a lot of shame around relationships and work, and relationship to work. All have played a factor in shame, but relationships in particular hit me hard because I happen to be a die-hard romantic, man. I believe in true love 100,000%. And that did not bode well for me growing up, where the status quo seemed to be more in alignment with a consumeristic type of approach to dating, where quantity was valued over quality, and there was always a lookout for, the cheapest deal, the next best option, that Wally World 2-for-1 special. And if I was able to be more self-aware at the time, I would have noticed how much I was contorting myself to fit into these paradigms, because anything outside of that norm was considered too Disney or wishful thinking or too woo-woo. Well, my response to that now would be, 1, energy is currency, and what you pay attention to is what you're gonna get. And so, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Reality show garbage, or your belief that reality is garbage? You know what I'm saying? And 2, Wu-Tang ain't nothing to fuck with. So, there's that. And to quote another lyrical prophet, J. Cole, real change only comes from inside. I couldn't hide anymore and had to admit that I didn't have true love in my life, because on some deep core level, I didn't truly love myself. Looking into the mirror like that is uncomfortable AF, because it felt a lot like my painter's tarp here looks, stained and splattered with random acts of violence and senseless acts of self-sabotage and cruelty upon my own heart's dreams and desires. To me, it's no wonder why so many of us choose to close shop on our heart and buy into the surface level BS. After a while though, and if you're stubborn like me, a long while, you get tired of playing the victim and villain game, and you decide to listen to that lingering feeling that there's something more than this. No more waiting on Godot. It's time to save yourself and be your own hero. And to be brave enough to re-enter the fray, even though, at times, it's gonna feel like the trenches in Bastogne for all my band of brothers fans out there. Unfortunately, the price of admission to re-enter love's embrace seems to be, a few dark nights of the soul, feeling cold, dark, and lonely, mixed in with some forgiveness for self, and a whole bunch of accountability. And I'm not talking like an overlord accountability that looks to beat the truth out of you like I'm doing to my tarp here. It just means having a sobering perspective on the part you played in your own making. Again, though, I want to reinforce this isn't some type of ubermensch approach of perfectionism. The messiness is all a part of it. The messiness belongs. You belong exactly as you are. There's no need for a clean canvas to begin again or get back in the good graces of God, if you want to put it that way. As the late great Ted Lasso wrote or said, skid marks in your undies are all a part of growing up. In fact, they're all part of the greater plan, which is to remember who the heck you are, and heck, beyond that, bloom into all that you can be. So, for all my love bugs out there who might be feeling beaten down and boxed in by the BS of the outside world, I would like to, one, shake you free of those shackles that bind you to the feeling of, non-existence, of disassociation, of feeling like you don't belong. That is not true. That is a bunch of hogwash. And two, to encourage you to keep going, to try and find what truly nourishes you, to discover all those gifts and talents that were overlooked in the past, and the ones that have yet to be revealed. Trust me, there's a miraculous brilliance inside those dreams and desires you hold dear to your heart. They simply wouldn't be there if they weren't for you. You deserve all of the love that you desire and all of the things and experiences you wish to have. While most of the world wants us to believe that seeing is believing, in fact, the opposite is true. Believing is seeing. So, for all my fellow Transformers out there that know there's more than meets the eye, I'm gonna leave you with a quote that's helped me transform the muck and the mire into food for thought, and that's one by Rainier Rilke. Our deepest fears are like dragons, guarding our deepest treasures. Peace. Also, peace, or PSS, postscript, script? No, just postscript. Anyway, I would also like to know, what does make you come alive? What's the love that you're seeking? Please tell me. I am so interested. If no one ever showed interest in you for these types of things, like this is absolutely something I love to hear and read about. So if it resonated and you're feeling brave enough to share, don't leave me hanging. Be a pal and let me know. Alright. But also, I get that it is terrifying, or can be terrifying, and it's actually super intimate. So, in the very least, if you were picking up what I was putting down and felt moved in any sort of way, don't fight that feeling and write it down, or just say it out loud. Admit to yourself what your dreams and desires are, and suspend disbelief and the need to make it make sense or sound reasonable. Like that can wait. It's a practice. Simply try it out. Be willing to sound like an idiot. You got nothing to lose, and maybe everything to gain. Okay, bye.